Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for showing up so early to our session. I hope you had a great AU so far. And thanks for joining us today. We want to share an overview of the data exchange capabilities with you today, as well as some real-world use cases shared with us by some of our data exchange customers. And before we start, we want to quickly also introduce our team. We are the Data Exchange Product Managers team, and as you can see, we are spread all across the globe, just like you and the customers which are using the data exchange. And we all have a strong background in AC and BIM, and we also share the passion for data interoperability and technology in general. And definitely feel free to reach out to us, to connect with us on LinkedIn, for example, and share your feedback, ideas, or stories about data exchange. Gareth and I will be today here on the stage, and Tobias is also here in the audience. Thanks for joining, Tobias. So, before we start, we would also like to ask you a couple of questions. So we would really love to know, have you been using the data exchange connectors so far? And if yes, which ones? So it would be great if you would just scan the QR code. You can also keep the Slido open, because we also have a Q&A tab. So whenever you have a question during the session, please just submit it in the Q&A tab, and then we will make sure to answer all your questions at the end. We should have enough time. Okay, Revit is leading, yeah, Gareth. So Gareth is our PM for the Revit connector. So Power BI. So yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm glad that we already have a lot of users in the room. So I think that's nice. Thank you.
Great. Only 13% or 12% are new to data exchange. That's great. So maybe we can keep the first part short. You already know everything. Revit Power BI, it's interesting. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing this with us. So our agenda today will basically be a brief introduction to data exchange. So for the ones of you who have not been using data exchange so far, we will just briefly tell the story behind the data exchange, what you can do with data exchange. Then we will continue with the key workflows with the customer spotlight, where we'll show you what others are doing with data exchange. And then at the end, we will also talk about the roadmap and what we are currently working on. And talking about roadmaps, we need to remind you of our safe harbor statement. So roadmaps are plans, and obviously plans can change. So please always make your purchasing decision based on the features which are already available and not on the roadmap items. Having said that, let's start with the data exchange introduction. So you have probably already seen this image a couple of times. It stands for the 3 pillars of the Autodesk data strategy. So in the first step, we are breaking down the files into the granular data so that you can streamline and automate your data workflows. And then, based on this granular data, we are increasing the interoperability between and beyond our products so that you can accelerate the collaboration between your teams. And we do that with services like the data exchange. And then, last but not least, we are also expanding the access to data to make it easier for you to find and use your data where and when you need it. And in this session, we will focus on data interoperability. And I would like to start with the most frequently asked question, which is, why is granular data so groundbreaking when it comes to data interoperability? And for this, I want to tell you a little story. So let's say you are working on this super complex project, and now someone else needs to work with it in order to finalize the equipment in the main control room, for example. So how do you share it with them? So obviously you can do what we have been doing since years. You can share this entire file. And we all know that files are quite complex and difficult to ship. So they might also include your IP, which you might not want to share with others in every case. And then the other person cannot easily see how it was built. So in order to access the control room, the recipient will need to dismantle half of the model and might also lose valuable time by doing so. So now let's think of another approach. What if you could share just a subset of this model containing only the elements that the recipient really needs? And you could also include all the relevant information about how the model was built. And while doing so, you would also be able to protect your IP. And in addition, you would maintain the connection to the original model so that whenever you change something in your actual model, you could also easily update the shared subset and keep everyone up to date. So I think the second option sounds much better, doesn't it? So this is actually exactly what data exchange does. It allows you to extract granular data from a variety of tools, and then you can share, extract, and update the subsets as the data exchanges. And this always happens through the Autodesk Construction Cloud, so that your existing access permissions and team setups also apply for the data exchanges. And as already mentioned, the data exchanges are structured granular data and therefore can be used for various workflows, including the coordination, documentation, and even data visualization. And the way we do it is basically through the data exchange connectors, and Gaurav will tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Leela. So yeah, as you heard, most of these works through the data exchange connectors, right? So before we dive deeper into how the connectors work, let me just give you a quick overview of what connectors we have today available for you all. So first off, we have the cloud connectors, which are available on ACC, which enable you to easily create data exchanges from the files that are hosted on ACC. Right now, they are available for Revit files and IFC files. Along with that, we also have a Power Automate connector, which kind of leverages the power of automating all of your workflows using this Microsoft tool and all the workflows that you can enable with it. For example, creating automated spreadsheets out of your data exchange, or setting up alerts for your team members to know when the latest data is available. Moving on, we have the desktop connectors. Some of them recently went to GA, so they are available for your production workflows for your teams to work right now. So the ones that we have today are Power BI, Revit, Inventor, Tekla, and Rhino. Power BI and Revit has been in production for a while now, but recently we released Rhino, Inventor, and Tekla into production as well. Along with that, we have few connectors in public beta. So these are all available for you to test and provide feedback to us so that we can keep improving on those and soon release those in production as well for you. So as we mentioned before, data exchange is available on ACC, and currently we support several regions including EMEA, US, and recently we started supporting in Australia as well. So let's dive deeper into how this works. The easiest way to get you into the data exchange ecosystem is our cloud connectors. One of the best ones to try out is the Revit connector. So how this works basically is you can create a view in Revit and publish it on ACC using the publish workflow. Once this view is available on ACC, you can simply create a data exchange from this particular view, retaining only the elements that are visible in this view and then sharing it with the downstream users wherever you want to load the data exchange, right? This gives you a good control over the elements that you want to work with, and then all of these data exchanges are in sync with the versions of the Revit file that you upload. So every time you upload a new Revit file, the corresponding exchange gets updated automatically. Moving on next, we have a very similar experience for our IFC connector that is in beta. So similar to Revit, you can upload an IFC file on ACC and you get a very same option to create a data exchange. Here, you can leverage the dynamic filters that we have specifically built for IFC, which enables you to filter the data according to the IFC classes, IFC properties, and IFC element types. So that way you can break down a huge IFC file into granular bits and then share the data exchange with the downstream teams. This is especially helpful when you want to break down a large file and share it downstream for documentation workflows, since it retains all of your GUIDs as well. Let's go to the next connectors. So moving on from our cloud connectors, now we go into the realm of the desktop connectors. We have a few GA connectors as I mentioned before, and let's take a look at how those work in your day-to-day life. So starting with the Revit connector, as I mentioned before, similarly you'll have to set up a 3D view in your Revit file, and then from this 3D view you can easily create a data exchange using the elements that are visible in the view. On top of that, you get some options to include the links that are visible in the 3D view, or also to filter it down to a specific category, even putting it a layer on top of what you have. Then these exchanges are visible on ACC for the users or personas who are not very familiar with Revit use itself. Next up, we're loading this into AutoCAD or Inventor. So in this case, we're loading it into Inventor, sharing it with the fabricator to add more details to your Revit model, right? Say for example, modeling balconies in this case. So this exchange can then be shared back to either the Revit user or any other user, say for example, Tekla or Rhino, right? When you have these exchanges on ACC, it also leverages other tools in ACC. For example, issues. So you can communicate any issues or any comments on the exchange data that you already have on ACC, and that can be taken up by your fabricator, by your designer, and they can update the model accordingly. And as the ACC workflow, you can also update the data exchange from your desktop tools, simply clicking on the update button, and then all of the corresponding data exchanges get updated accordingly. So everyone is on the same page when it comes to updates. This workflow also shows the documentation. So data exchanges are mostly used for reference workflows today. So it works really well when it comes to documentation workflows like sheet creation, tagging, and then dimensioning. So over a period of different versions, you can retain those tags and dimensions as they all come along with your properties. Another good example is our Tekla connector. In this case, you get multiple options to align, Tekla properties with the Revit properties, also the Tekla categories with the Revit categories. So your structural framing shows up at Dream in Tekla, which is very helpful for categorizing different type of elements in Tekla. One more thing I would like to just quickly pause, and I'm sorry if the video is too fast, but feel free to reach out to us and we can dive in more detail. So once you load data into Revit, you get an option to load those as model groups, which helps you in creating multiple instances of smaller subsets. Say for example, in this case, if a pergola model is repetitive across your whole design, you can just load it once as a model group and you can create multiple instances. This helps you in just creating one exchange, and every time it gets updated, you can have all of the corresponding instances updated as well, right? Our Tekla workflow also is very optimized for your dimensioning and tagging workflows. So if you are doing any documentation, especially detailed drawing creations, the dimensions are retained across multiple versions of your data exchange or design too. Last but not the least, we have the Rhino connector, where you have more expressive designs and you want to share it with your architects. It can be easily done using the Rhino connector in conjunction with your Grasshopper models as well. And then we'll be talking more about the Power BI workflow, but definitely all of these can be federated into one Power BI dashboard for the people who are not more into the design world but would like to know the progress of the model or just do a quick QA QC of your model. So this shows the power of Power BI and how you can federate different kind of models into Power BI. Next up is our Navisworks connector in beta. So we've heard the request from a lot of you around the Navisworks connector, and this one is very interesting because it enables a huge number of possibilities when it comes to Navisworks, because we have large number of formats that are already supported in Navisworks. Now adding on to that, you can also load a data exchange in Navisworks and use it for workflows like clash detection, and then at the end you can also create exchanges from Navisworks federated model. So if you're loading in your structural and architectural model together or MEP model in Navisworks, you can create a subset of that model and then use it downstream for workflows like creating dashboards. So these are all the connectors that we have, but you are not limited just to the connectors when it comes to the data exchange ecosystem overall. So Leila will talk more about what else can you do with the data exchange ecosystem and how you can expand it on your own as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Gareth. So as Gareth already mentioned, you are not limited by the connectors which are available as of today. And of course, we know that we cannot build all the connectors that you need. So there are a couple of things you can do. to make the most out of your data. So you can use our GraphQL API, for example, to query the data, or you can use our .NET SDK to build your own connectors for very specific use cases you might have. For example, let me show you how this can look like for the GraphQL API. As mentioned, our Power Automate connector already comes with templates for an easy setup of notifications, and they allow you to notify the team through Teams or Slack whenever a new data exchange is created or updated. And you can use this connector to also automatically extract the data from data exchanges through the GraphQL API we mentioned before. And for example, you could do that to update the room book or the room schedule or the door schedule whenever the data exchange is updated. And with the ACC Connect, you can even go a step further and basically query the data directly through the GraphQL API, which gives you even more flexibility because you can combine this with some Python logic, and by that easily create, for example, a customized model checker, like in this case, to check the compliance of your Revit or IFC files, and then even create reports to help you to ensure the model quality. And then another example with our .NET SDK, you can even go a step further and create very customized experiences. Like, for example, the BIMDEX connectors you might have already seen in the keynote. Screensoft in this case is combining their advanced capabilities known from their BIMDEX plugins, which are available for Revit, Plan3D, Inventor, and so on, with the data exchange technology. And here is how it looks like. In this example, we see a Plan3D model, which is shared as a data exchange and then loaded into Revit. And notice that in this case, this doesn't happen as a reference like we do with our out-of-the-box connectors, but as native geometry, which you can edit inside of Revit. And this can be very useful for specific workflows, and we hope to be seeing even more of such custom connectors in the future. Now, let's come to the next question. So now that you have seen what we can do today, before we start with sharing what other customers are doing with data exchange, we would like to hear from you. Which workflows would you like to improve with data exchange? So now, having seen what Gaurav has showed you, and also what you can do with the GraphQL and the SDK, are there specific workflows or something that comes into your mind where you're saying, once I'm home, I want to try this out. I want to play around and see what I can improve. Inventor. Great. Coordinate. Oh, coordinates. we love that. Model validation for IFCs. That's interesting. Yeah, we also have an example from a customer who is doing exactly that. Yeah. SolidWorks, Archicad. Interesting. Bentley Open Roads Designer, Rhino, 4D sequencing, Civil 3D alignments. Yeah, absolutely. We want that too.
Yeah. You see 2, 3 Civil 3s, 4
Civil
Civil
3D.
3s, Civil 3s leading the board. Yeah.
Who did this? Sent 5 times. Great. Okay, right. Inventor is trying to keep up with Civil 3D. Great. Yeah, thank you for these. That's amazing. Yeah, we'll definitely touch on some of these topics, especially in the roadmap session, and on some of these in the customer spotlight, which we are starting now. So we are really delighted that so many customers have shared their workflows with us. So thanks for that to everyone who is here, and also for the ones who are not able to be here themselves. So let's kick off the customers spotlight part. So we start with the WSP Australia, who are using our data exchange connectors for Navisworks and Power BI to streamline the project delivery and combine the designs with the project schedule, the cost plans, forecasts, and the KPIs in the Power BI dashboard, making these then accessible across the teams and even for stakeholders with no BIM expertise or access to Navisworks or even to the ACC. And by doing so, they are increasing the productivity and also eliminating unnecessary tools. So we often hear that from many customers that the Power BI is used simply for an easy way of sharing data with stakeholders who are otherwise not familiar with the BIM tools or are not able to use them. Then another example is from the National Consulting Office for Engineering from the United Arab Emirates, who have shared a very in-depth video with us showing the workflow for setting up a clash report in Power BI based on data exchanges created from Revit and a clash report exported from the Navisworks. So Power BI allows you to combine different data sources, as you might know, and in this case, we see that the data exchange is combined with the XML report from the Navisworks. And here you can see how easy it is actually to load a data exchange into the Power BI through the connector and set up the dashboard, including the viewer, which is available in the Microsoft App Stores. And for all the other data, you can use the out-of-the-box Power BI visuals to visualize quantity, the materials, families, and so on. Then the clash report in this case is loaded separately and can be connected to the data exchange table through a relationship in Power BI. And as long as both of these tables have a unique identifier, such as the element ID, for example, you are able to connect them and display them in the dashboard. And once the Power BI report is configured, it can be published on the web and depending on the Microsoft license, shared with all the stakeholders. And such dashboards can provide all the necessary data to everyone, as mentioned, regardless of their software skills, in order to simplify the communication and the reporting. A similar approach is also used by V&V Bravo, an international construction company operating in Peru and the US, who have been incorporating the Autodesk Data Exchange as a key element in the monitoring, operational visualization, and the communication workflows. And they are connecting the clash reports from model coordination with multiple data exchanges from Revit. And these are then federated in the Power BI, making the clash results and other data accessible to users who are unfamiliar with ACC again, or who have a limited access. And this also shows it very nicely that you are able to load also multiple data exchanges into the Power BI. So it's not only one, but you can create basically a federated view of several data exchanges in the Power BI and then use them in the same dashboard and the same viewer. But of course, data exchange can not only be used in the Power BI. Now we have seen a lot of the Power BI examples. So let's have a look at some other use cases. The Tidhar Group, a BIM pioneer from Israel, is mainly using Revit on the projects, but sometimes the teams may also involve the engineers working with other tools. And Amir is here himself to talk us a little bit through the workflow.
Hello everyone, my name is Amir and I live in the BIM department in Tidhar in Israel, which is one of the largest real estate companies in Israel. This case is about our sub-company, which is prefabrication, as you can see here. Our challenge here was about with our structural engineer, which share with us only IFC files because of the DEP. And in this case, for those of you who work with IFC, know that link the IFC into Revit was a lot of problem and challenging, because when updating version, all the annotation can lost and the file cannot be published to ACC for the entire set of stakeholders. At this specific time, we met Leila and Gary, and this solved all our problems regarding this. And we use the IFC data exchange connector in order to pull the data from the IFC and publish it again to XCC. As you can see here, all the dimensions keep going for all the version updates, and that's all.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Amir. Yeah, I think, as already mentioned, we would love to see a full class about your workflow maybe next year at AU, so we are counting on you. Thank you so much. A very similar approach is also used by the Deutsche Bahn, who are combining an open BIM approach with Revit in their pilot projects. And the projects are managed on ACC, and they also involved many teams with complex team setups and permission settings. And to simplify the project setup and the IFC version management again, the uploaded IFC files are converted into data exchanges, which are then used for documentation purposes inside of Revit, and again are visible across all the views of the published Revit model on ACC. And of course, all of the properties from the IFC file are also transported through data exchange into Revit. Skanska has also been using the Autodesk Data Exchange for validating IFC 4.3 model exports from Revit in the Power BI. So having the data exchange updated on ACC whenever a new version of the IFC file is available, and then being able to refresh the visualization of the data in the Power BI a minute later with both the viewer and the metadata updating seamlessly is described as game-changing. And longer term, there are also countless other exciting use cases for data exchange for an innovative construction business like Skanska. And the first use case they have told us about is that they are validating model data from the project models and giving the supply chain partners access to a visualization of the validation results, along with the instructions on how to amend any gaps in the information to meet the project requirements. So this is like an easy way to communicate across the project stakeholders and also visualize quality of a model. Another very exciting project is the reconstruction of the Pont de Pierre, a historical bridge in Bordeaux built in the early 1800s. And to stop the pillars from gradually sinking under their own weight and threatening the bridge structure, Eiffage is performing a series of very complex interventions, including the girdling of the pillars, additional micropiles drilled from the surface of the bridge, complete renovation of the waterproofing and a drainage system of the entire bridge deck, heritage restoration of the thinning rooms, and placing additional rocks to protect the pillars. And the modeling of all this is mainly done in Revit, with some specialist models also shared as IFC. And to make these complex processes more transparent and also to improve the communication, Eiffage has combined all the models in Power BI and connected them with a schedule, resulting in a dynamic dashboard shared with all the stakeholders for an easier overview of the individual stages and the timing. Then what we have seen so far, I think, shows very well that Power BI dashboards can get very complex, sophisticated, especially when connecting many different data sources. I'm sure for everyone who has already worked with Power BI, you know the DAX and the relationships can get really quite challenging. So our partner 5D VDC from India has specialized in developing exactly such dashboards for their own clients, including such advanced implementations, like in this case, the direct retrieval of the additional information through other Autodesk APIs. And this example shows a dashboard which pulls issues created on ACC and visualizes them along with the model data loaded through the data exchange to create a detailed overview of these issues. And another example also shared by 5D VDC is this advanced 4D dashboard based on the data exchanges from Revit and also the ACC schedule data, visualizing the progress over time, including the elements count and also, for example, the concrete volume in this case. And now, if you are wondering, do you always need the Power BI to achieve this? Actually, the answer is no. You can also build your own dashboards. And Pranav from 5D VDC is also here. And Pranav, if you would like to tell us a couple of words about this example, it would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So you've seen a lot of Power BI dashboard, the data exchange, and other APIs from the Autodesk platform services. One problem we found from our customers is distributing these dashboards becomes complicated and expensive when you want to start sharing this data to 1,000 people in an enterprise setup, right? So you need Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium licenses. So we realized and we wanted to solve this problem. With Data Exchange API, with a lot of other authorized APIs from APS, we are able to now create a web app when all of you can do the same thing and then actually showcase the dashboard strategy on a website with your own authentication or the authorized authentication. This is something that we delivered for one of our clients, and that's the direction we are moving, using the APIs, but not going to the Power BI, but directly to solve the distribution problem.
All right. Thanks, Pranav. That's very exciting. So moving on next, we saw a lot of usage of our Power BI connector, Revit connector. So how does other connectors come into the picture here? So we have one use case shared by our partners at CCTech, right? They've also been working with us in developing some of these connectors. So in this use case, they're using data exchange for construction of a stadium, and in this particular case study, we are using the Revit connector, Navisworks, Civil 3D, Rhino, and Tekla connector all together at the same time. All right, so this starts with your conceptual drawing or basic drawing in AutoCAD, and then this is shared as an exchange to your Revit design team and the Rhino design team and the Tekla design team. So Tekla uses this to to model the column locations, and then this is again the same Tekla model is shared with the Rhino team to create a mass for your seating for the stadium. So once this mass is kind of created in Rhino, then this is again shared back to the Revit team for more documentation and detailing on top of this existing mass. This all is powered through the connectors, and then all of the teams are in sync with the same versions. And if you have noticed, this kind of reduces the overhead of exporting different file types for different end users, right? So now you have your Rhino model for the stadium, and this goes back to Civil 3D to model the detailed pathways and the site and the site modeling. And then the Civil 3D model is again shared back to the Revit. So everything is federated back into Revit to see a whole more holistic project altogether. All of this then comes back to Navisworks for coordination, all through the data exchange connectors. And then Navisworks leverages the power of clash detection to find out any defects or any design flaws. So this comes in very handy in your design coordination phases. I know in the actual model coordination and the detailed coordination, it might take more than this, but this comes in very handy in the design coordination or early conceptualization phases. So moving up next, we have a very great story from COWI, and we already had an amazing session from Ivan yesterday, and we have one more special appearance, of course. So let's call in Ivan himself to talk about what they did at COWI and how they leverage the data exchange for their workflows.
Thanks. Thank you. So for those of you who didn't make my session yesterday, for COWI, for us, we're very heavy Inventor users. We use Inventor for all of our bridge work, whether it's the final design, temporary structures, construction, fabrication drawings, and so forth. So what we want to get into is what we're calling the BIM world in Revit. So in order to achieve that, we use data exchange connectors to push our better models. One of the examples shown here for our bridge pylon into the Revit space without necessarily having to know how to use Revit for a project team. So it's been a very, very useful tool to help get the maximum product from our Inventor users into a Revit space to where our Revit users and our BIM managers are able to convert that into what the client needs for BIM and for IC delivery. So yeah, so the previous slide showed how we created the data exchange file from Inventor. And then what we do on the Revit side is we record, because Inventor uses a local coordinate system, 000, so to speak. And we have to make sure we align that with what the project base point is in Revit. So for us, the engineers that create those Inventor models, we have a documented Excel file for all the northern eastings, elevations, and transitional or translation coordinates and rotational coordinates required to adjust the data exchange that gets brought in. And we use a simple Dynamo script, which has now been replaced buy the latest version of the data connector, and use that to place our model in there. Sorry, just make it. So our Revit user, who actually doesn't know how to use Inventor, she would just download all of our data exchanges, reload them, and if they're not at their right locations, she would open up the Dynamo layer that we created and select the right elements to read off the row, and then the engineers would come back and look at the model on ACC to see whether it's in the right place. And then if we ever need to modify anything, our engineers would go back into Inventor, republish the model that's required, and then circle back around and rerun the scripts again to replace it back into the space tech. So, a very dynamic tool between our Inventor team and our Revit team to achieve what we need to achieve without upskilling and spending hours to do that.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Ivan. And also shout out to Ivan's team because they've been one of the very early adopters of data exchange. And if you don't know, they've presented upon data exchange in past Autodesk universities as well. So a lot of this that we're building also, comes from the feedback that we've been sharing. Thanks a lot for that. Cool. So moving on next, now we saw what the data exchange connectors can do, what people have already done with it. And now let's take a look at what else do we have in our roadmap and what are we planning for our connectors moving forward, or just the data exchange ecosystem in general. So broadly, we are focusing on four different areas for the data exchange or the interoperable ecosystem. Focusing on maturing the existing set of connectors, existing set of offerings, adding more cloud capabilities to you along with the AI workflows, and also developing more regions, supporting more regions, and supporting more services that already exist. So let's dive deeper into them one by one, right? So on maturing the ecosystem, first off, we want to take our IFC connector to GA. You've seen a lot of use cases for this IFC connector just now, and those are just in beta, but we'd definitely like to take it to GA. And then moving on next is improving our Civil 3D connector. Of course, that was the leader on the survey before. So we see that, and we want to improve on the Civil 3D connector and also have a new approach to this existing connector so that it has more performance and stability as you desire. Then the next one is on the Navisworks connector. So Navisworks connector, you saw all the use cases. So we also want to keep pushing more on the performance, as it is known for handling large models very efficiently. So we'd like to invest more on the Navisworks connector and also take it to GA soon. Moving up next is more on the capabilities that we want to build. So a very interesting one is the model coordination support. Just like we saw the Navisworks use cases, we also want to support data exchange in the model coordination module. So basically, in the first stage, you can include data exchange into your model coordination module and use it for model coordination as a file type, right? And in the next phase of the same, you can create a data exchange from the model coordination federated model from ACC directly. So this takes away a lot of file export, import overhead that you're feeling right now, right? So the next one is also AEC-DM integration. So AEC-DM today is more API focused, and you need a certain persona to handle the AEC-DM. So what we want to do is integrate data exchanges with AEC-DM, so you can create a subset from the granular data, so the source of truth itself, instead of going to a file. So that's coming up next. And then last but not the least, the native interoperability. So this keeps coming a lot with the Tekla usage. We've seen the use cases where you want to take the architectural model into Tekla and then convert it into native. We're doing it with the IFC workflows today, but of course we'd like to make it more efficient. So that's something that we'll be focusing on. Same goes with Civil 3D pipes, taking Civil 3D pipes into Revit and turning it into native pipes. So this is just a sneak peek into what we are trying with the model coordination workflow. So basically in this case, you're just creating an exchange from Inventor, and just a reminder, Inventor files are not supported for model coordination today. So you can create an exchange, put it on model coordination, and with your factory layouts or equipment layouts, you can do a class detection on the model coordination model itself. Right, pretty interesting stuff, right? So, so next up, we've been hearing a lot about the automation, the AIs and MCP, and of course our teams are also working towards that. So to start with, we want to build automation workflows for data exchange. So all the clicks and all the experiences that you saw for the connectors, of course, some of you have a repetitive workflow. So we want you to enable those repetitive workflows through APIs, through automation, and that's something that we'll be focusing on. And then the Autodesk Assistant workflow that you saw in the keynotes. So we want to expand on top of that and release it for the usage very soon. So that's something that we'll be investing in. So the Autodesk Assistant can read into your data exchanges and also help you create data exchanges with a certain set of settings or prompts. Moving on next, I think we've already all of this is based on our SDK, and we know for sure that we can't build all the connectors for all of your workflows. So we want to encourage the community to build their own connectors and support them with their building of the connectors and workflows. So this goes a long way when you have a strong SDK, and that's what we're focusing on. So we will be focusing on the SDK, that is the foundation of our connectors, and letting it out to rest of the teams. Also, Autodesk has announced support in several regions, and then data exchange will be following on those steps, and we will be soon supporting different regions as well. And then again, maturing the work, including our ACC offerings. So we have a bunch of features that you already have on your ACC subscription. We want data exchange to seamlessly integrate with those, so your teams feel easier to work in the same ecosystem throughout the project life cycles. All right. Thanks for bearing with us throughout the presentation and being the great audience. Here we have some resources to get started with data exchange. The QR code takes you to the link tree, which has all the resources you need to get started with the data exchange and any tutorials. Those QR codes are also on your seats, so you can grab those. Those are stickers. You can use it as you like. And feel free to reach out to us. We have a quick question. Leela, do you want to talk about the Slido?
Yeah, so in the Slido you saw before, you can basically scan this and then ask your questions, and we should be able to see them. Or you can also just ask them right away, depending on how you prefer. Is there anyone who would like to ask a question in the old traditional way? Please.
How do we get access to the SDK right now?
So the SDK is available on our feedback portal, the center code. You will also get a link over here. So you can download basically the SDK from the center code or the feedback portal directly. Yeah.
Yes, please.
When you're saying we'll be able to create data exchanges from model coordination, would that include like selecting columns and the organization that we can do with the object?
Yeah.
Would that filter all of that?
Yeah, take it.
Create the exchange, data exchange.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to fix the Slido.
So when we support coordination, data exchange for model coordination, will we be able to create it from the filters as well, the filters that we have in model coordination?
Yeah, so that's the goal when we will be supporting the model coordination to basically support all the functionalities which we have in the model coordination. We cannot say at the moment in which stage that will happen, if it will be in the first step, and you remember our safe harbor from the beginning. So it's always a little bit difficult to plan, and to say when that will be available. But in the first step, the goal is really to be able to read the data exchange and then to support the colors, the filters, the data table, the clashes, and so on, and then to continue further integrating the data exchange. If you would like to be involved in the beta phase, if you are using a model coordination actively, then definitely feel free to reach out. So on the QR code, you will also find, besides the links, also our mail, which is the support email address, but we are basically all reading these emails, so it's not like a traditional support. We are still a small team. We handle these emails ourselves, so we will both read your email and respond to it. Yeah. Yeah, great. I was worried that Slido is not working, but I can see some things are coming up. please.
Yeah, so any plans for introducing this data exchange for Bentley? Because when it comes to infrastructure, we're using a lot of Bentley based on the DOT requirements. So it seems it has been developed for the vertical construction where we mainly use Revit or maybe internal decimal software, but any plans for integration with Bentley?
Yeah. So I think, as I mentioned before, first we'll explore those waters with Civil 3D, the horizontal construction part, and then of course, we want to support other applications too. None of them are on the roadmap as of now, but that what I would say for sure is Civil 3D comes first, and how that goes, then we can expand into more horizontal structures as we go along.
I like the first question.
When new versions of Revit or Inventor are released, how do you prioritize the interoperability with all of those programs?
Yeah. Okay. So as we mentioned that most of our connectors are in GA now, right? So moving forward, what we want to do is also be aligned with with these products releases. So when we have point releases, and those try to align those with our data exchange connector releases as well. So right now, most of these connectors are a plugin that sits on top of your application. Moving forward, we're also looking towards a vision where these data exchanges come out of the box for these applications, so it makes it more easier to be in sync with new versions of your Inventor, Revit, and Navisworks, for example.
On this line, can I just ask one more quick?
Sure, yeah.
With the model coordination data exchange working, can I technically do now 2014 data exchange and 2024 data exchange, 2025 data exchange on model coordination and do the coordination? Like, does that solve that problem?
Oh, that's a good question.
So
Technically, yes.
yes. Yeah. So a data exchange is itself version agnostic. So yes, technically you can. Since again safe harbor, we don't know. So we are still in very early phase of development. So we'll see how that works. But technically it should work even with the versions. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, because maybe to provide the background today, you are able to create data exchanges on ACC from Revit 2024 or newer.
Yeah.
And the connectors are also available from 2024 or newer. We have an old connector for 2023, which is still in the beta, and we are not developing it anymore. So it's like starts with 2024, but model coordination really does open up a lot of other use cases, like Navisworks does, right? Because many things you can load into Navisworks, they become a Navisworks file, and then you can use Navisworks to create a data exchange also from an older file.
Yeah. And that's a good question. I'd like to talk more to that. Is it also depends on the application. Like if it's a very old application and data exchange supports it, what might differ is the level of support, like what parameters are going through with Revit 23 and what parameters are going through with Revit 24. That might differ a little bit. And there's only so much we can go back and change in Revit 23. So those are the limitations that will still be there, but you should be able to aggregate the models.
Even 24 onwards, that's good.
Yeah.
So does an AutoCAD file on ACC exporting a DX update when the file is saved? So you mean
DWG?
So yeah. So on ACC, you can basically create data exchanges from Revit and IFC files, not from DWG. When you want to create a data exchange from AutoCAD, you need to use the AutoCAD connector and then create a data exchange. And when you create data exchanges with the connectors which run on the desktop software, then basically you need to click update. Like you save a file, you need to trigger the update. But then it will be updated on ACC, and everyone who has already loaded the data exchange through the connector into his software or also into the Power BI will receive a notification. There is a new version available. Would you like to load it?
Yeah. Just on that one, someone who has asked this question, if you'd like to meet with us later, we're also interested in developing that feature, like building more cloud connectors, more cloud native workflows. So we'd like to hear more on this particular question and how would you like to imagine this? All right.
I got a quick one for you. You were saying this is currently only available in some regions, US, Australia, EU, you said? Or
Yes, EMEA.
not Canada at all?
Oh.
When you say United States, it's like the US, not Canada.
I think there is not a dedicated Canada ACC region, right? So we are receiving to the ACC regions. So they are these regional data hubs, and we have. We created one. It's one of the new ones. Yeah, we just introduced. So I got confused. We just introduced like 4 or 5 new ones. So there it is not supported yet, but we are working on supporting these new regions. But yeah. But I guess most of the project you might be using now are still on the US region. Yeah. Yeah.
When creating an exchange from Revit to Revit with respect to base point, so I can see the potential as an MEP contractor. We have a project that has 13 Revit links. It has a lot of fluff that we don't need to see, and therefore we have a very heavy, very slow model. Could you kind of use data exchange to ask everyone else to just share bare minimum? Respect to base point comes in as a Revit link, but it turns our models a lot lighter.
Yeah. So to that, when you create an exchange, what it refers is only the project origin. So, but when you place it in the Revit file again, you get those options to either place that origin on your project base point, survey point, or a specific XYZ coordinate. So while loading the exchange, you get an option, but right now while creating, you can only share a project origin point. So if that works for the team.
If they're all set up the same way, they'll all have the same.
Yeah. If they are all set up the same way, then you don't even have to worry about, it'll just align on top of each other.
We also had one about any plans to improve the model viewer. Our company has found 3D BIS interface to be more user conducive. So when you say model viewer, do you mean the ACC viewer or the Power BI, the viewer in the Power BI? That would be interesting to know. If you would like to add something to that, feel free to chime in. You mean the Power BI viewer? Yeah.
So basically, it was not my question, but I have been also facing the same issue. So when we are reporting data exchanges in Power BI, there is a limit of showing numbers of new elements in Power BI. So I think it's a limitation of Power BI, not maybe the data exchange. But have you found any workaround to get it fixed?
Web app. Yeah, so Power BI, we do see, especially when it goes into the direction of model validation, model checking. Power BI is just not meant for huge data sets. So I think it maybe makes sense to just think of, okay, what do you want to have in the dashboard, and maybe create several dashboards. The data exchange itself is also meant for the subsets of models. So don't just push everything, but maybe think of, okay, what do we really need in this dashboard, and then create like kind of a more granular Power BI dashboards, because otherwise Power BI just gets a little bit overwhelmed. Yeah, with data exchange, we are trying to catch up with Speckle. So I think in general, a data exchange and Speckle are maybe similar to some point, but if you have a look at a data model and what was shown in the keynotes, a data change is basically a part of a much larger story we have on the platform level. So basically, it is another way of working with the data, especially if you are already storing your data on the docs, the ACC, then you are simply still using your same teams, permissions, and so on. But of course, there are many other different and valid ways to share your data. So I think it's, yeah. Does it reduce the model size for the part that's used for data exchange compared to the actual one? So
I don't think it affects the model size of your actual model. And again, if you take a look at the data exchange itself, it's a 0-byte file on your ACC. So it doesn't have the construct of file size for that matter. What would make difference while operating with it is the quantity of elements that you have. So depending on a connector, and that also depends on how the connector is optimized. So that helps with the answer.
Model placement. I think we should take that one, Gaurav?
Was model placement managed in general between? Okay. So, so the real world coordinates is an interesting one. Right now, we don't support the real world coordinates, when exchanging the data exchange. But on the other side, we have multiple options when you load a data exchange, as I was just talking before. So you can actually assign an XYZ value while placing the data exchange in your model. Or you can actually can also pick a certain point where you want the data exchange to be placed. So that gives some control over how you place your model inside your destination application. And then by default, if you just choose to not do any of these, it places an origin of your authoring application and just on top of the origin of the source destination application. So these are certain ways how you can get around the placement and just managing the different locations between the models. I'm converting from Rhino to the distributions. Yeah. So right now from Rhino to Revit, I think the restrictions, we don't have any restrictions as such because we support the models that are in Rhino. You might we don't what we have is a limited support for textures, limited support for renders. So I think shape wise we don't have any limitations, but when it comes to colors and textures that are out of the box for Rhino, we don't support those. So you get basic colors when you get into Rhino.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we
Just,
went through all the questions.
just want to take a quick look, quick stab at the next half of the same question. So when you do load a Rhino file into Revit, you can actually map the Rhino layers to a certain category in Revit. That is now driven by a JSON file, which can be not a JSON file, but the file that can be edited, and then you can map a certain layer from your Rhino file to a certain category into Revit. And along with the data exchange connector, we also have a data exchange template for Rhino. So when you start up the model and you start up the model with that certain template, it just makes it whole lot easier to take things to specific category in Revit. So yeah, you can do that.
Are you planning to give some tools to find the different coordination in the data exchange file? I mean, the origin that you just talked about?
The coordination as in the mapping of the category, yes. So we're working on a more user experience centric UI where you can basically just map those categories. Like one side you would see all the layers that are coming in from Rhino and all the categories that you have in Revit, and so you can choose which categories get mapped to which layer. So it's easier while loading the exchange itself.
I'm talking more about the coordination. I mean
the origin, the 000.
The origin.
The origin.
Yeah, so I think it's a bigger problem. We're working with multiple teams to get that aligned, so that when we have a solution that works across different applications, your Civil 3D, other AutoCAD and Revit, shared coordinates as well. So yes, we're working on that.
Thanks everyone for
Thanks
the
all.
great questions.
Great question.